Welcome. Check this out. This is a point-to-point line variance chart. I'm going to show you how to build this today. What a point-to-point line variance chart is within any kind of line graph, it's going to call out 2 points. You'll see above it, there's an arcing line that's going to connect them. You can set the range. Maybe it's just 2 months, maybe it's 3, maybe it's 4. It will then show the variance with a label. It's going to show the percentage difference. It's going to say, is it going up? Is it going down? It's going to show the numerical difference as well. I'm going to show you how to apply this to a data set, and then you can transcribe this into any data set that you're currently working with. So let's dive into Power BI Desktop. Let's build this line chart. Let's go. All right, so here we are in Power BI Desktop. I'm going to start with 2 things. Firstly, this video is from a request. Someone dropped me a comment on another video that said, hey, could you please make a tutorial on this? And I said, absolutely. So you should leave comments about anything you want to see. I will work towards it for you to make a tutorial. Secondly, this is not a concept that I thought of, but it's from another video from this guy called Goodley, and then as well as he's referencing from someone else. So it's been passed along quite a bit. I'm going to unlock this tutorial for you more. There's a couple of things you need to do. Firstly is download this file. Go to the description in this YouTube video. Download this file. You're going to have a lot of DAX in there. It's going to have a working session. What we're going to do is first, I'll go give an overview of the chart. We'll then look at the data behind it so we can understand how it functions. Then we'll have a lab tab. We're going to go through together. We're going to build this in detail. You're going to see how it's going to work. We're going to work together to build this table as you follow along. And then finally, we'll build the chart together. It's going to be an in-depth tutorial. If you stick with it and you watch it, you're going to learn how to build this cool thing. So let's check it out. Let's recap this again. So on the left-hand side of this line chart, you'll see first, it's just graphing views from Mr. Beast's video. On that note, there's another video you should check out for the cumulative comparison dashboard. It takes every video, it aligns it to an x-axis, and then charts it over time. You can filter, you can view it. Check that video out here. It will be in the file as well. For this, we're going to go point-to-point chart view. So again, we're graphing the views. If we hover over it, we can see there's 50 million, and it just kind of keeps going. You could have this on any data set you want. It can be sales, it can be calls, it can be anything. Now, what's really cool is these parameters on the left and how they work with this chart. So on the left-hand side, as I pick a month, it's going to set the start point. So in this case, I picked March 2024. So March 2024 right here. And then I can pick the range. So this is going to increase or decrease the length of this bar where it's looking. So in this case, we'll go 5 months back. So for 5 months back from March to November, it's going to highlight the 2 values. It's going to show that it increased. There's been a 102 million view increase or 19% growth. You can then move this throughout the chart. It's going to do its thing automatically. Everything's dynamically formatting. It's really cool. You'll have the views, you'll have the labels, you'll have the whole deal. This is going to be some DAX intensive stuff. It's going to be some formatting stuff. It's going to be a video that's going to equip you. Let's keep going now. So that's the overview of what we're going to be building. Next, let's look at the PTP, point-to-point data view. So I want this to show you how it's functioning behind the scenes. So on this table, we can see that the views is plotted out just like a normal kind of chart, dragging and dropping a measure. And I'll talk to the data model at a high level as well. It's trending. This green line is going to be the total views. The DAX we're going to build is we're going to build a views point line. So you can see essentially I'll go through this in more detail, but there's going to be, how do we build these bars? How do we build this loop around it? How do we construct that? But you'll see there's going to be this measure. Then we're going to create a line. It's going to be dynamic. It's going to be a threshold percentage. So it's going to kind of overarch and automatically shape this visual. As you can see, the height of things kind of changes based on a percentage above the maximum point. So I'll show you that. Then we'll create a marker, the 2.7 right here, and there's the marker. We'll create a label, this guy right here, and then dynamic color. So it'll be conditional formatting with the colors. But as you can see, as I click around, these data values move against the views. Maybe if I expand the range, it went a little deeper, expand further, you can see how that's working. So I'm going to show you how to build that. There's going to be a couple of different steps. So first, let's just take a look at the data model. On the left-hand side, if you go to model view, there's a few extra tables in here, and we're going to recreate them together. We're going to go through this step by step. So first, we have Mr. Beast's videos. It's going to be essentially a video and how many views did it get, or likes or comments on any given day. We have the historical date that happened. These are the really two key tables. Some of these other processing tables are just to create the data set. What we're going to be creating is a second table that will be used in two methods. First, it's going to allow the end user to select and move this secondary range of filters, and that will be set up. And then secondly, it's going to move the line as well. So it allows the user, but then it allows the model to interact. So let's start with that process. We're diving in now. So point-to-point data lab tab. Our goal is to construct this right here on the bottom right. So let's go through it together. Let's start. And again, the goal of this is you should be able, after this video, to apply this to any data set you're currently working with when you want to have this line chart. It's the same principles, the same comments, the same complexities, everything. You can use the same DAX and transform it. So what we're going to do is we're going to first create a table. And in the Mr. Beast calcs in the top right, counts, let's get the views. We're going to construct this right here. We're going to go to the historical date because we want to get some key attributes for this. We want to get the year. We don't want this to be a sum. Cool. So we're going to get the year. And then we're going to get the month abbreviation. Okay. So let's just order these columns. And again, we're going through this. And so follow along because this will be important to just kind of trend out how we build this thing. What I'm going to do is this table down here, I'm going to go to Format Painter, copy, and paste the formatting just so the formatting is the same. I like DIN formatting, DIN fonts. Okay. So now that's just a very simple thing. You could do it with your data set for the number of sales or anything that you have. So we've created this. Now we need to work through the process for how to create these measures. So the couple of key things is that these filters or these measures are going to reference like a fake filter. And this concept is where we're going to construct a table now right here that's going to sit outside of the data model, but it's going to be referenced by the end users and it's going to be referenced by the DAX. And you'll see how that kind of shakes out. So the first thing you need to do now, after you've started the base table, is we need to create a parameter for a range. And what this does, if we look at the data, a period range, we're going to have this generate series concept here. It just makes a list. Very simple. So what we're going to do is we're going to go modeling, new parameter, and we want a numeric range. And in this case, we're going to be analyzing it by months. Maybe in yours, you want to do days. You want to do years. You can do whatever you want, but this is where you're going to pick the interval. So I'm going to have a numeric range. I'll call this, we'll call it 4, we'll go 5, and time point filter. 5 time point filter. This will be hidden in your model, but this is what you'll use. We'll do whole number. The minimum is going to be 1. The maximum, we'll just say 12. You can set it how you like. 1 day increment, add the slicer to this page. So that's going to create this for us. Now we just created this time point detail. Let's do this. Let's just do the same thing, copy this formatting, and you can apply it here. So it all just kind of checks out. What I'm going to do next is we're going to change the title of this thing. So I'm going to go hide the slicer header, add the title. We'll call it period range. Cool. Again, let's do this. Cool. Oh, so I did that hider. We're going to go like this. We're going to come over here. I'm just going to call this period range from right here. Okay. Very cool. So now we have this period range happening. And so to understand what this is doing on the back end is if we expand this time point filter, it's essentially creating a calculation. So it's going to take that list and say 5. Okay, well, we're going to throw 5 into your model. 4, 3, 2, 1. And this is going to be the number of days. So it will piece itself together as we keep going. So we've created this period range. Now we need to add the date selection for this range. So it's going to be the dummy one. And what you can do is create a date table. In this case, you can come up to this DAX and just copy this right here, and I'll paste it in there. It's a simple way to create a date table. What I'll do next is actually this. I want this to be called period range 2. We'll just call everything 2. And I'm going to name the table actually time point filter. So we'll do this period range value 2. And this will be right there, just the range. So we're good. Okay, so what we're going to do next is create another table. So we're going to go to modeling, then new table, and we can just paste this in here. And this is a very common way to create a date table. This is just code that I use for every date table I ever create. It's simplistically going to say, create from calendar auto, look at the model, get all the date ranges that could potentially be there, and then add in these additional columns. If you want to do a hard-coded date range, you could just use this right here. But this is what I use a lot. So I'm going to go for time point detail 2. Okay, so now we've created this date table. And as we can see, the date table, so here's our period range 2. I'm just doing this in duplication so we can see, if you're following along, you'll see the same thing. And let's move this other table down here so we can see time point detail 2. All right, so now let's create a filter of time point. And again, they're not connected yet, but it's just the interface of it. I'll show you how it connects in a minute. So we're going to take time point detail 2, and in this case, we'll format that year to text, the same kind of thing we did earlier. I want it to be a hierarchy of months. Again, maybe years, you want days, you can set it up however. So I'll do year and then month abbreviation, and I'm going to come up here and change it to a filter. Now we have a list. That's good. We want to go in any date table. I always take the month name, sort by, and change it to sort by the month number. So you get that order: January, February, March, everything. Let's take this, copy this, format the painter, apply it over here as well. And we're good. So now let's move this sucker right over here. And right now, nothing is specifically happening, but we can see that we have this set up now and this. And these are just going to be referenced in the DAX. And this DAX is going to be more complicated. So I went through and I've commented around it. It's a lot of repeating things. I'm going to talk through it fairly quickly, but the DAX is also in the file. So go into GitHub. You can just open this file up. You can copy it. I'll show you how to change it as we're going to go through and set it up like you would with your own kind of data. So what I'm going to do now is let's create the views point. So under Mr. Beast Calcs, there's this folder that I've created called point to point line. We're going to start with views point. And this is a big piece of DAX. Don't be intimidated by it. I'll talk you through it. So we're going to make a new calculation, new measure, and paste this into your data model. I'm going to call it views point 2. Okay, so I'll talk a little bit more through this first one, and then we'll go faster through the others. So if I just zoom in a little bit here, I've added comments that kind of explain what each of these things are doing as well. So you can plug it in, but we're going to go through this process and literally plug it in for hours. So views point to first the latest date from the time point filter. So this time point filter over here, whatever somebody picks, we want to get that. So in our case, I've called this, and we'll see if I rename things correctly or not, but time point to date. So this is where we're going to put in from that new date table we created, get the max date. The period range, I called this period range 2 value. And so what this is doing is this is saying, okay, now get the value. So in this case, I have 7. So it's going to put 7 in here. So we know start from here, get the number 7. Then it's going to go dates between. So now we have this value right here that we put in for the dates. So we're going to put this back in here. And it's going to be the time point detailed date. So we're going to get the list of dates between the end of month for whatever I selected and the current month value, which is that value from the slicer over here. And essentially what that's going to do then, it's going to subtract this period, which is this number here, 7. So it says go to this date, go back 7 periods, because that's what's in here, get the current month, get a listing of dates. And now I've added this variable called increase percentage. This will make more sense as we get down to the bottom of it, but this is going to be the ratio of how big you want that line above the line chart. So if we have that line, it's kind of going, and then there's another one above it. This is going to be the percentage of gap. So this says 10%, 110%. You can change this, but just start with 1.1. You'll see. Now let's keep going. So we're going to create a new calculated filter table based upon our date table that we've created here. And so we already have the actual date table. So historical date 2, this is like the table that's referencing the views that is in the model. And we're going to treat it as this new dates table we've created and have it work essentially with the date table. So you'll leave this, or you'll set this up to be your actual date table in these 2 values. Now what this is going to do, a top table and a bottom table, is it's going to go to the actual historical date table, and it's going to reference it to get the actual dates between these varying things we set up. So it's going to get the list of dates for the start month period, and then it's going to do the same for the end. So those are those 2 data points in the top and bottom. It's going to unit it together to make a single table. Then we're going to pass this in, and this is a lot of DAX. That's why if you copy and paste it, you're going to see, and you'll be able to get through it when you apply it to your model. After you do this a couple times, we're going to do it like 4 times. Now it's basically saying get all the views for everything that's selected, filtered based upon the filter calendar, which is up here. And the values in period, it's going to get all the values for the given period based upon the filters. So that's a lot. But if I hit return, we'll see if we get an error. And if we add this now, I'll make a new folder called point-to-point line 2. So I always like to keep things in folders. So we're going to come over here, and if we click this new views point 2, I'll say PTP lab. You might want to make your own folder, but that way we can just go through this process together. So let's add views point 2. All right, and it worked. So as we can see here, what this is doing, and to talk through it, is it's using this filter over here, and it's referencing this period date range. So in this case, it's making these points. You can see how they kind of move closer. And now this is acting independently from this one, because we're literally recreating it. And it's returning these values. So that's working. It's working exactly as we would expect it to be. And the reason why it's 561 is because the logic in here, when I was talking about that ratio line, this right here, 1.1, at the bottom of this thing, it's saying get the max value across the range for all the values and periods, and then multiply that by an increased percentage. So in this case, it's going to be 10% greater. So between these sets of data points, 510, 10% of that is going to essentially make this number 561. And this is going to be used to plot in the line chart. And we'll talk about that, but you want to just get that kind of dialed in, but you want to have an understanding of it. So now we're going to make the line, and the line is going to be this same number but repeated for every value within the period. So it's almost the exact same calculation. There's just going to be a slight change in some of the filtering. So let's go through it again. So we're going to make, if you come to the line calc, let's copy that. Let's make a new one. And this, we'll call it line 2. So again, we're going to get from that filter, the new one, the date. And we call that 5. Or what did I call it? For time point detail 2. For time point detail 2 date. And this is so much of the same thing we did before, but repetitiveness just breeds, you know, the ability for you to do it in confidence. So I'm replacing this stuff now. The period range value, remember we have a different period range. I think we said that was 2. Cool. And time point detail, the same stuff, the same percentage, the same historical dates, the same views. And the only thing that's going to be different in this one is the other one had a different filter context down here in the calculate views and period, where instead of that top bottom filtering, we're going to filter it on the calendar and return everything, and we're set. So now if we add this, it should do the same thing. Boom. So far we're tracking well. So now we have this value. If you can click it, you can see how things will move around. Now let's add the marker. So the marker is going to do nearly the same thing as the views point, but it's just going to return the actual value. So this is 506. It's going to return actually 506. So let's go to the marker. Very simplistically, copy this sucker, lab tab, new measure, easiest DAX of them all, marker 2. If, and this is views point 2, if there's a value in views point 2, which is this right here, then simply return the number of views. Super simple calculation. We'll come up here, we'll add this one too. And look at that, that's showing up. That's going to be shown, so let's make sure we add the comma. And now you can see this is 270, this is 270, that's what it's doing. It's just saying if there's a value here, bring that value over. And there's one more piece of DAX. So this next one's going to be the line. Or there's a couple more pieces actually, I'm sorry. But we're going to do now the marker, or I'm sorry, the label. So this one is a little bit more in depth, and I've kind of expanded on this from what its standard is. So we'll talk through it, just like the other ones. It will be less intimidating. New measure, and again, open this file. You can just copy and paste this, tweak it for your model as you see fit. We're going to call this label 2. So we already know that for this time point detail, we want the second date. We've done that a couple times. For this period range, we're going to pick 2 because that's the value that this is set up to be. Now let's go through and look at some of these other things. The magic's going to happen at the bottom of this. But in this case, we're going to put the date field here. It's going to get the whole list of dates like we've already been doing. The same top table, bottom table, where we're going to leave this as it is. But again, you'll want to replace this historical date if you're putting it into your own data model based upon the actual calendar date that's linked up to your data. It's doing this, is getting the top bottom values, because we're going to get those points. And we're going to say get the first value based upon filtering for the top table, the second value based upon the bottom table, calculate the value for each of these. So this is where we're going to essentially run that same calculation. It's going to create it for the bottom table. But now we're doing 2 things at the bottom. We're going to take if you know those lines, the 2 points, it's essentially getting the values for the 2 markers. And it's going to say divide those and create a percentage, and then subtract them and create just a variance number. Now there's this formatting stuff I put down here, and essentially what this is going to do is it's just saying if the value of these things is going up, then put a plus sign in the front of it and format the subtraction amount to be a certain number, as well as then the percentage to say growth or drop, depending upon if it's positive or negative. And then same with this, where if the last value is less than 0, then it's going to be subtraction, and you won't have a negative sign. It will happen automatically. This formatting is the same thing. You can go through it. Just will use all the variables which we set up above. So it should be pretty smart. Let's just see what happens here. Put this sucker in here. Close this. Label 2. Oh man, it is working. So if I move this around, you'll see this is saying it's growing. These two numbers, it's increased 194 million, which is 85% growth. Maybe if we keep moving, you know, we can find something that declined if we want to, but it's working. That's awesome. It's set up. So now the final thing is going to be for the point-to-point color, because in this chart, again, if we're looking at this, here's our markers, here's the value, here's the label we created, here's the line height, here's the error bars that we'll set up. And now what we're going to do is if we come back, or we need to change the color of this. So if we find a spot where it decreases, I guess if I pick 1 month back, boom, see how that turned red? That's what we're going to set up. So if we come back to the data view, our data lab tab, the final column we're going to create is going to be the color. So it's going to be it's the same thing repeating. That's why, you know, repetitiveness, just knock it out. You can see it doesn't take too much time. In this case, we're going to do 4 time point detail to date. This, the same thing. Period range 2. Copy this time point detail date. Put it right here. And historical date, this all stays the same. Everything we already talked about, it's going to do the same views. It's going to do all the same calculations. But now at the bottom section, after it divides it and says, is it positive or is it negative? This is where you can put in whatever colors you want. The first value, if it's less than 0, so this is going to be your red, this will be your green. You can choose whatever colors you like in the model. We'll call it color 2. Close this sucker out. Add color 2. And now you can see, you know, green for good. So if we go for, I think it was like a February value, drop, red. It's working. And there you go. So now we've created all the measures and you have them in your P2P lab. And again, you're following along, you should be creating the same thing. Now, we are rocking. It is linked up. So let's talk about the chart. So what we can do next is how do we build the chart? Well, first, let's just copy these two things we just created over here, which is the filter for the calendar table and the period range, and paste them over here. Sync them up, sure. Okay, so here's the steps to build this line chart. And we're going to dive in by first creating the basic line chart. So for that, we're going to pick the number of views from our data model, make it big like this, and now we're going to go to the historical date, and I'm going to choose, my picture's in the way here, I'm going to choose year, month abbreviation, and let's turn this into a line chart. So you'll first notice it looks all funky, and that's because this needs to be set up a little differently. So on the x-axis, we want the month abbreviation to be under the year. And, oh, it's because I have to do this. So I have a date hierarchy I've created. Put this on the x-axis. Get rid of this. The drilling up, drilling down. So you add the XY axis as you pretty much typically do. We're going to sort the axis by the order of this. And we want to make the order ascending. So we just created this green line. Very easy. Green line going up, and it's matching this one over here. So let's clean some things up real quick. For the title, we're going to turn this off. It's going to be intuitive. For the x-axis, let's call that number of views. Number of views. Oop, I'm hitting too many things. So we're going to go now. Oh, I called that the X, my bad. So we don't need the x-axis title. I'll copy this though. Turn this off. We want the Y. I was confusing the X and the Y. Classic. Title, number of views, din, 10. We'll get the formatting to match here in a minute. And so we have the month. Let's just make these values a little bit differently. So what I wanted to do is on that y-axis, the range of the values, display units, put those into millions, and set this to din. So that's kind of more squared up. I went with bold, it looks like. And we'll also, that title, make that bold. Cool. Now the x-axis correctly, let's format that up a little bit, clean it up. So we want this to keep your fonts the same. You always want your fonts to be the same. Make this bold. Your preferences, your choice. Okay, so we have that. Now let's just format this line a little bit. So what we're gonna do, and we'll have more formatting that will happen, but under the lines, under the series, let's actually add the points and then we'll format the colors of them. Okay, so here's what we're gonna be doing now. So with all the measures we've created, we're gonna add them to this chart and you will see it start to take shape. So the time point, Mr. Beast Calcs, PTP Lab, these are all of our things we just created. So let's add the marker. Look at that. Okay, so I have February selected. You can see a marker showing up here in February. And then 5 months back, here's the other marker. We will format them. So we've added the markers. Cool. Now let's add that line. Awesome. Now we have a line at the top. And again, we're going to format it and we're going to get these error bars as well. So if we just look back at the data, just to ensure, what we're doing is we're plotting this as the line. Here are the markers. We're going to add the label and we're going to be rocking. So now we'll add the error bars as well. Now let's add those error bars. So we'll add the error bars last actually. If we go to the line, a new functionality that was released is, if we go to the line 2, which is our top line, so we want the color of this to be yellow. We want the thickness of everything to be 5. You can make it as thick as you like, but we'll start to make this box. And we want the label. So now what we can set up is the data labels. We can turn these on. Oops, we don't want it for that. We're going to want the line series line 2 color data labels. Oh yeah, so we're going to turn these on, but then we're going to actually go to views and don't show them for that. We're going to go to marker 2. We will show them for marker. For line 2, we don't want to show them here either, but we're going to do a trick. So now we can we can actually change the value of what's going to show up for line 2. Sorry. So we do want line 2 to show up, but if we come back to the data view, we don't want the value of line 2. We want this label to show up instead. So we're going to come to this tab, go back into this new setting, lines, pick the line series. We're going to go to the data labels, turn it on, but then the value, we're going to come here, we're going to say we don't want that, we want the label too. Oh man, and it's showing up. So let's talk about where do we want it. The position, I like it above. Okay, look at that, it's starting to come alive. So we'll format some things here in a minute, but let's add the error bars now. So to do that, we're going to go to the error bar section and we're going to apply it here. But what we're going to do is we're going to add the upper bound, and that's going to be views point. Because if we come back here and we look at our data, views point, these are essentially the bars. So we're going to come back to this, go into error bars, upper bound, views point 2, enabled. Oh man, we have 2 lines, jackpot. So let's make these bars. We're going to make the bars yellow with 5. Sweet. Marker, none. We just want it to be a nice smooth round line. And we're rocking, man. We have it. So if you start to click around, you'll see it's moving. You can move everywhere. It looks really awesome. And that's checking out. So let's continue. Now we're here. Let's go back to the lines and let's format this part now. Let's format these points in their labels. So line, let's go to the marker. I want this to be black. I want it to pop out. And now let's do the data label for this. So again, the data labels, come to the marker 2. We're going to want the background on. I'm going to make it slightly transparent, but it kind of pops out. I like black backgrounds because it's going to match the dot. The value, we're going to make this white and din. And I also like to show the display units to none because we have so much space. Oh, sweetness. Now that's moving around. Look at that. It is moving. We can change the range. It's moving the values around. It's all working. It's looking better and better every single step. Cool. So now let's format this line chart a little bit more since we're in the space. So we're going to go to line or views. Sorry, that's the number of views. We want that same color to be green like it is, but we want this to be 5 so it matches everything else. But now let's flip on the shade. Boom. Let's make it a little bit more transparent. You can set that to however you like. And now, as this moves, it's going to intuitively say, here's all the stuff we're talking about. Here's the range. We are looking good. Let's go back up now to this, this deal up here and set the conditional formatting as well as the background of it. So to do that, we're going to go back to this. We're going to choose the data labels, and specifically we're going to go to line 2, because for line 2 we said we want that to be above and we put the value to be the label. We're kind of tricking it, but now we want the color of this thing to change. So firstly, I always like din, make it bold, make it whatever you want to do. I kind of made it a little bit bigger so it pops out, but again, your choice. And let's change the color of it now. So all this is going to do is, because we have that rule created, or field value, we created under our lab the color too, that's going to dynamically set the color. Boom, it's green now. If we move this thing around, you can always check it, find somewhere that decreased. Oh, it's red. Look at that. Everything is working. I love it when stuff works. And now we're going to come up to this and just change the background so it kind of solidifies it, groups it together. You're going to do that by going back into the data label section, which is right here. We have this line. We're going to go to the background and turn this on. Boom. Make it a little bit more darker, whatever you kind of like. Find that sweet spot. And you have done it. You can tweak the formatting as you see fit, but you have just created a point-to-point line chart. Now you can apply this to any, we gotta clean one more thing up. We don't want to show all these values in the legend. So just turn that legend off. And now you've really done it. So you can test it again. You can move this thing around. It's changing. This kind of next level visual, it's going to impress the end users of your dashboards and the reports you're building. This kind of stuff is not out of the box. It will separate you as an awesome, significant developer. Like this video, subscribe. Please leave me any comments, anything you want. I'm so thankful, and you all have a good day. Take it easy. Bye.